The Imperial Zevathian warship Eternal Dominion hung in Earth's orbit like a jewel of impossible geometry, its crystalline spires refracting starlight into colors that had no names in human languages. Aboard it, Asil pushed her mop across the obsidian floors of Corridor 7 Alpha, humming a song her grandmother had taught her 23 years ago, back when Earth was still free. She didn't look like a revolutionary. She didn't look like anything special at all. Just another human janitor in gray coveralls, one of 10,000 who kept the massive vessel clean. The Zevathians had conquered Earth 6 months ago, not with violence, but with a simple demonstration. They'd moved Mars 3 inches to the left, just to prove they could. Humanity had surrendered within hours. Now humans served as the labor force for the occupation fleet. Asil had been an art teacher once. That life felt like a dream. Section complete, she murmured into her wristcom, wringing out the mop. The cleaning solution they used was some alien compound that made the floors gleam like mirrors. She could see her own dark eyes reflected back at her, tired eyes that had seen too much change too quickly. The corridor curved ahead, following the non-Euclidean architecture of the ship. Asil had learned not to think too hard about how the geometry worked. It made her head hurt. She was reaching for her supply cart when she heard it, a sound that made her freeze mop halfway to the bucket. It was crying. Not the harmonic, frequency-modulated communication of the Zevathians, but something rawer. Something that sounded almost human. Almost, but not quite. Asil followed the sound down a side passage she'd never noticed before. The lighting here was different, softer, warmer. The crying grew louder, more desperate. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She should report this. She should go back to mopping. She should... The door irised open at her approach. Inside was a nursery. That was the only word for it, though everything was wrong. The walls pulsed with bioluminescence. The crib was a floating sphere of liquid light. And suspended in the center, wailing with a sound that tugged at something primal in Asil's chest, was an infant. He was Zevathian, clearly. His skin held that faint, prismatic shimmer, and his eyes were too large, too knowing. But his face was contorted in universal infant misery, and his tiny fists pumped in distress that needed no translation. 3 Zevathian caretakers stood around the sphere, their translated voices sharp with panic. The prince requires rest. The sleep cycle must be maintained. The frequency harmonics are perfectly calibrated. He should be comfortable. This is the 4th rotation. The emperor will be displeased. The infant, the prince, screamed louder. Asil didn't think. She'd spent 3 years working in her sister's daycare before becoming a teacher. She knew that sound. She'd heard it 1,000 times from 1,000 different babies. She walked into the room. The caretakers spun toward her, their iridescent robes flaring. You, human, you are not authorized for... He's overstimulated, Asil said quietly, not taking her eyes off the baby. The lights are too bright. The sounds are too complex. He's exhausted, but he can't settle. One caretaker made a dismissive gesture. Zevathian infants require... He's a baby, Asil interrupted. And babies need to feel safe. Before they could stop her, she reached into the light sphere. It felt warm like bathwater. Her fingers brushed the infant's arm, and he immediately grasped her finger with surprising strength. The screaming faltered, hiccuped, stopped. Asil lifted him out. He was heavier than a human baby, and his skin felt like warm silk. She cradled him against her chest, swaying slightly, humming that same old song from her grandmother. The prince's enormous eyes locked onto hers. One tiny hand reached up and pressed against her cheek. Then with a shuddering sigh, he closed his eyes and went completely still. Asleep. The nursery fell silent except for Asil's humming. The caretakers stared at her like she'd just performed a miracle. Or a crime. She wasn't sure which. I should go, Asil whispered, trying to hand the baby back. Don't move. The voice was new, resonant with authority. Asil looked up to see a Zevathian who could only be royalty. His robes flowed like liquid starlight, and his presence filled the room with an almost gravitational weight. Emperor Ferrat. Asil's blood turned to ice. She was holding the Emperor's son. She was a human janitor holding the heir to the throne of the species that had conquered her world. She was going to be executed, vaporized, scattered across the cosmos as a warning to others who... You made him sleep. The Emperor's translated voice was soft with wonder. 14 of our finest caretakers have tried for 4 rotations. How? Aesel swallowed hard. He needed someone to hold him. To make him feel secure. It's what babies need. All babies. Ferrat moved closer, studying his sleeping son with an expression a seal couldn't read. We Zyvathians spawn fully independent juveniles. We have no concept of this holding. This need for physical contact during development. He looked at Asil, and she saw something unexpected in his luminous eyes. Uncertainty. Our scientists did not anticipate this. The prince is the first natural birth in 10,000 years, a genetic experiment to restore what we lost when we transcended flesh. He's not an experiment, Aesel said before she could stop herself. He's a baby. Silence stretched between them. The prince snored softly against Asil's chest. One small fist curled in her coveralls. What is your name? The emperor asked. Aesel. Aesel. He tested the word. I am appointing you as the prince's primary caretaker. You will teach us how to care for him. How to... Hold him. I'm a janitor, your majesty. I just mop floors. You, Ferrat said, just accomplished what my empire's greatest minds could not. He reached out and gently touched his son's head, then looked at Asil with something that might have been respect. Perhaps there is more to humanity than we understood. Perhaps in seeking to rule you, we overlooked what you could teach us. Asil looked down at the sleeping prince in her arms. She thought about art classes and lost dreams, about conquered worlds and uncertain futures. She thought about her grandmother's song, still echoing softly in the nursery. He'll need a schedule, she said finally. Consistent sleep times. And someone needs to hold him every day. Skin contact is important for development. Then you will teach us, Ferrat said. Show us how to be his caregivers. As Asil rocked the prince gently, watching the most powerful being in the galaxy, learn to touch his own child with tenderness, she realized something profound. Empires could conquer worlds with power, but it took something much simpler, much more human to conquer a heart. She was still just a janitor. But maybe, she thought, that was exactly what the universe needed. And